Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm Anne Marie. I have some leftover decorations behind me from my partner's birthday. They'll probably be up there next week as well. And so, anyway, free verse is exactly what it sounds like. It is free to be whatever it is. It's like the poetic form. The rules are there are no rules other than it's not written in any kind of meter or rhyme. Traditionally, the word verse meant that it was written in meter, that it was written in iambic pentameter or, you know, trochaic tetrameter or whatever it is. Blank verse is poetry that's written in meter but without rhyme. Free verse says we're doing whatever we want, no rhyme scheme, no meter scheme. So essentially, with free verse, what you're writing when you're writing free verse is the poem really comes to life in the rewriting. You have your first draft, and then as you go into revision, then you take a look at things like line breaks. You take a look at things like the images that you're trying to create, the word choice that you're using. Are you using an extended metaphor throughout your piece? And maybe you would alter some of the vocabulary so that it's reflective, more reflective of that extended metaphor. Those kinds of considerations are things that come in the revision process. For me, when I write the first iteration of my poems, they're more or less a skeleton. It's like I have an inspiration to write about something and I just kind of do it. And then I look at it later with more of a poetic lens. Okay, where do I want to go with this poem? Or I bring it to a critique workshop and have my friends take a look at it and say, oh, I think that it could be strengthened in this way, or I'm confused about this, or have you thought about uh, blah, 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 blah. But the two main things that I think about right away, even when I'm making the skeleton, is what's the plot and what's the point. And recently, a poet friend of mine described this from a course that she was in as what's the poem about and what's the poem really about. So you might be reading a poem and I'll give you an example of what's the poem about, what's it really about. In my collection, Survived By, the final poem is my poem Halfway. What it's about is me describing a dream in which I meet my father who had recently passed away on the moon. And we're, bouncing around weightless and we're laughing. And I wake up laughing to the sound of my own laughter. But what's the poem really about? The poem is really about feeling still connected to my father after he passed, how he's still with me, even though he's not on this plane. So there's the what's the plot, but then what's the point? So I was really hoping that I would come today with an idea of what I wanted to write about. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So I was going to ask you, is there a topic or I don't know, something that you feel inspired to share that I might try to write a poem about?
Hi, this is Lynn. And offer something. I mean, no one else is going to say anything. What would you think about writing something about, I guess, a relationship in its finality? You know,
Ooh,
making the decision to sever a tie, even though it's maybe not something you necessarily want to do.
Okay, hold on. Let me write notes. Relationship in its finality. Oh, have I had a lot of those?
Right, right. Me too. So, just wondering. Anyway, okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. All right, I'm gonna switch cameras. All right, I'm glad that this is in its correct orientation here. I do use this camera occasionally for my face, but in order to do that, I have to like unscrew it and flip it upside down. Anyway, okay, so we're gonna write in free verse about our relationship and its finality. Um, Another great example. I don't have this poem written in any um, collection, but it was published in MacGuffin, a poem about, I'm going to switch back just real quick, about the finality of a relationship. I wrote about my ficus that I was moving. My relationship had just ended and I was moving out of my apartment. He had already moved out. I was moving out as well. And a friend came over to help me move, and I was moving this 6 foot ficus. And she just happened to be a gardener, and she's like, "Oh, why are you taking this dead tree with you?" And I was like, "Oh, is it dead?" And she was like, "Well, maybe it's not. How long have the leaves been like this? They were still green and they were still on the plant, but they were like very, very dry." And this was in March of 2021. And I was like, I don't know, like maybe since October. And she's like, oh, yeah, then this is very dead. So, I wrote about this conversation, but then my reflection on it was how long had this tree been dead? And I had no idea. How long had I been watering this tree, not knowing that it was doing nothing? But I was not talking about the tree, so what's the plot and what's the point? Okay, here we go. A relationship and its finality. Oh gosh, which one to choose as my inspiration? Um, okay, let's see. Relationship and its finality. What words come to mind when I think about relationships and their finality? I'm just going to write some words as inspiration. Maybe there's some bitterness, um, resentment, feelings of betrayal, or maybe also feelings of relief, of release. I'm already rhyming, kind of slant writing. Um, what are some images when you think of a relationship and its finality? Maybe moving out, empty rooms, um, leftover photos, um, the inside jokes, um, other things that I think of, the maybe the empty side of the bed. And this also depends on if you're happy the relationship is over, or if you're not happy, or if you're kind of ambivalent in between the two things. Um, okay.
If you want to go level hard, you might want to you could maybe speak to the dissonance around feeling both of those things, relief and sadness.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm
I
sorry. I'm
have
supposed to stop talking. Excuse me.
no, I
This is
like
my
that, and
first
I
time
think
here.
I'm
I don't know how
actually
this
going to
works.
go in that direction. I got a little wave of inspiration. Um, so I'm just gonna start. I'm not going to think about things like word choice, line breaks, stanza breaks. I'm not going to think about internal rhymes. I'm not going to even really think about imagery too much. All I'm going to do in this first iteration is just get it out of me and just see what happens. Because sometimes you even start a poem and you think you know, or maybe you know what the plot is, but you don't know the point yet, and the poem tells you what the point is. Or maybe you go into it thinking you know the point, but then you find out that there was a different point. Sometimes the poems have their own minds and they end up telling you what they want to be. So I'm just gonna go for it and then we'll see what happens. So okay. Hey. Let's see. Okay. I don't hate what I made right now, but I gotta read it out loud. There's really no structure here or anything. You can see I kind of started with like some 5 lines. Well, I guess I didn't even continue. Um, but yeah, so I used to ask myself what time I'd wake up if I wasn't jolted awake by the blender, your fucking smoothies at 6 a.m. I used to ask myself how long my bag of coffee would last if you weren't brewing 4 cups of it each, I'm gonna make fucking a motif each fucking day. I used to ask myself what my apartment would look like without your boyish art or your wayward socks on the floor in front of the sofa, without the college textbooks you'd never read again but refuse to get rid of, without the ugly throw pillow from your mom, a housewarming gift. And actually, I think I could go even more with this and kind of have two shorter stanzas and have this one be just a litany of complaints. Okay. So anyway, without the ugly throw pillow from your mom, a housewarming gift. Now I know. 8:30, 2 weeks, empty. So I think, Lynn, uh, and this just came to me thinking about my relationship from 2 relationships ago. Um, and our breakup then. This is the relationship that inspired the ficus poem that I just told you about. That there's some bitterness and resentment with the foul language. I feel like I could add some more fuckings in here. I used to ask myself what my apartment would look like without your boyish art or your wayward. Maybe I could change like these and go back your fucking art or your fucking socks on the floor in front of the sofa without those. Well, I guess I'll leave college textbooks because you only want to have, well, I only want to have one adjective to make it feel like the same rhythm. You'd never read again, but refuse to rid of without the ugly throw pillow from your mom, a housewarming gift. What other things could I add? This person was also a wonderful human being, by the way. We still are in contact, but we were not meant to be. And at the end, it was very terrible. And now I know 8:30, 2 weeks empty. And I feel like this last word kind of leads into that ambivalence. Well, is this person feeling relief? Are they feeling sadness? Are they feeling maybe a combination of the two? Are they feeling regretful? You don't really know. Um, oh, okay. I just saw Alan just sent me a message saying he had to go, but that's okay, no problem. So now that I have this skeleton, things that I would think about, like I just changed these words from I guess maybe more descriptive to less descriptive to add to the tone of the poem. And in my revision process, in my rewriting process, I'm going to brainstorm more. Like I said, I want to expand, and I'll just make a note to myself here. I'm going to expand this section. And sometimes it's helpful also to start your poem. I have a document on Google Drive that I call the poem incubator, that I'll put this in my poem incubator and then I won't even look at it for a while. And then I'll look at it with fresh eyes in a couple of weeks, maybe even a month, maybe, even longer than that. Who knows? And I'll look at it with fresh eyes. But I'm going to do just one round of revisions right now just to see kind of a little bit of my thought process when I do the rewriting, because rewriting is where the writing happens. And my PFF Jess just was, or maybe a few weeks ago, shared with me a video on YouTube. If you look up Story Corpse, you'll probably be able to find it. And she talks about and then she's talking about writing a novel and not a poem, but I feel like the same principles apply, that you start with the skeleton, you start with the bones of the story or the poem, you start with the bones. What do you want this poem to be about? The finality of a relationship. I mean, maybe you start out as basic as, I feel so sad, the saddest I've ever felt in my life, right? Like just so basic. But then you can say, okay, what's a scene that really describes how sad I'm feeling? What was I doing? Was I listening to a sad song? Was I eating a certain comfort food? Was I going to bed early, sleeping late? Was I neglecting other kinds of responsibilities? And Ginger just put the video in the chat. Um, so taking a look at what emotions are you describing and how can you turn that into imagery? How do you turn that into scene? And you might have heard also the phrase show, don't tell. Um, if I were to go back to this poem, I mean, I don't want to brag, but I think a lot of this is showing. So um, I'm showing, um, like I don't say that I'm frustrated. I don't say that I hate this. Like my partner used to wake up super early and make himself a smoothie every day for breakfast. And the sound of the blender would wake me up every day, even though I wouldn't have to go to work or something like that. We lived in a 1 bedroom apartment. So, there's nowhere to hide, that kind of thing. Or I'm not saying my partner would drink all of my good coffee and whatever else. And these could also be lies too. So you don't have to tell the truth. It doesn't have to be autobiographical. You can also think of a situation that didn't happen, but would still serve the purpose of describing what you want to share. Because poems don't have to be journalistic pieces. Nobody, you don't need to be fact checked. You're not on the witness stand taking an oath to tell the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth. It can be a facsimile of what happened. It can be completely fiction. Like, who cares? It's a poem. It's just a poem. Um, and then kind of describing all of the different things that are around the apartment that I didn't like looking at. And then instead of saying, oh, it's so frustrating and I'm so upset about it, I used the rough language to indicate that frustration without saying I was so frustrated by this and I hated it so much. You can show that in your words. And then instead of saying something like, oh, but I regret it because now I know, or then when we broke up, I found out, it just shows the reader, I now know 8:30, 2 weeks empty. Um, so what I was doing was I was going to show, well, kind of one round of revisions. And I like to just start from the top. If I were to do this and I type this into my poem incubator online, a lot of times I will copy and paste the iteration of the poem so I can see the two side by side or above and below and kind of compare and contrast and just see if it's working in its changes. Okay, so I think I'm going to change this opening line. Instead of I used to ask myself what time. Usually when I'm doing revisions, one of the first things I look at is line breaks and how can I add line breaks that create um uh what do I want to say? Line breaks that create mystery, that leave the reader hanging on and wanting to know the end of it. So I used to ask myself what time? Like what time for what? And then the answer is I wake up. Maybe I'll leave that as is. What time I'd wake up if I wasn't jolted awake. It's actually, so this I'm gonna highlight here. If I wasn't jolted awake by the blender, I feel like that's kind of wordy. It could be like if the sound of my partner making a smoothie in the NutriBullet, I could get very specific. Didn't jolt me awake at 6 a.m. every morning. Something like that. And do I want to talk to the person? Maybe I don't want to talk to him. Instead of saying your fucking smoothies, I could say his. Because maybe in this poem, we're not speaking anymore. Like, I'm not writing this to him, I'm telling somebody else about it. Maybe even they're complaining about their partner or something, and I'm telling them this story. I used to ask myself what time I'd wake up if the blender didn't jolt me awake at 6 a.m. each morning. It's fucking smoothies. Yeah, I like this. So same here. So I used to ask myself not what time, but how long? How long? How long what? My bags of, do I want to say gourmet coffee? Do I want to get really specific and say like small batch roasted? Whatever, whatever. I used to ask my myself how long my bags of um, yeah, I'll just say maybe gourmet, a fancy, yeah, I'll say gourmet. Gourmet coffee would last if he weren't brewing 4 cups each fucking day. Here's where I'm gonna go off. I used to ask myself, ugh, myself, what my apartment would look like without his fucking art or his fucking socks and floor. And I'm gonna keep this line going in front of the sofa or those college textbooks he'd never read again, but refused to get rid of just in case, or the ugly throw pillow from his mom. Oh no, my meeting will end in 10 minutes. Uh-oh. Okay. I'll have to look into that. From his mom, a house warming gift. So I won't think of more things because I have a time limit, but um, I'll just say now I know. 8:30, 2 weeks, empty. Um, so in this version, I changed some of the line breaks. I fixed some of the things that I um, had crossed out. I added just in case. And when I when I revise this again, I'm going to think of more things so that I have two short stanzas and then a really long one, and then I'll have this short one again with just the answers to the questions. And there's no meter, no rhyme. And I think the plot of the poem is the speaker of the poem is um, asking or saying that they used to ask themselves these questions about the annoying things that their partner would do. But now that the relationship is over and they have the answers, that um, maybe they're regretful or maybe they're feeling ambivalent about um, not having those annoyances anymore. Okay, does anybody have any questions for me before I call it an evening? Or do you have any thoughts, comments, hopes, dreams, fears, concerns? Okay, I'm gonna make some announcements that I put in our reminder email that I have some subs coming up in the upcoming months. I have Sarah Beth Brooks is going to be here April 6th, teaching a poetic form that she invented called the boxcar poem. And then my friend Christian Perfas, also known as Soul Stuff, is going to be here on April 13th to demo writing a spoken word poem. He's a very incredible spoken word poet. He's done a nationwide tour and he has a book called Play, The Reclamation of Soul. And then in May, my friend James Coates is going to be here teaching one of the forms that he's invented, the Four Kings. And then on June 1st, Ginger, who's in the audience today, will be here leading a demo on the centum, which is a hybrid form between the pantum and the cento, which should be a thrill. And so with that, I'll just say good night and see you next week. Oh, wait, we don't know what we're doing next week. What should we do? Do you have any requests? If not, I'll go through my list and just kind of choose one.
Is this hi, this is Lynn. Is this list of like a like form?
My list of no. I have like a list of like almost 300 poetic forms.
Oh, okay. I was just are you asking us to choose or do you choose?
Give me an idea. Do you have a thought or request?
Yeah, first I just wanted to say thank you for going on my my topic. I thought your poem was interesting. Um
Thank you.
I wonder about have you ever done anything with haiku? Did I miss something with haiku?
I did do one on haiku. You can find it on my YouTube channel.
Okay, all right, cool. Okay, no worries.
Yes. Yeah. Ginger, I saw you unmute. Did you have a request?
Yeah, I would love a golden shovel or duplex, maybe. Have you done either of those yet?
I haven't. All right. I'm writing them down. Golden shovel, duplex.
At some point, too, you should do your invented form, the rib cage, maybe to lead up to before your subs.
Oh, I didn't invent the rib cage, but I feel flattered that you thought that I did. The rib cage was invented by another poet named Athena Liu, and invented that poem during a workshop that I was in with them with Tornay Greathouse a couple years back, where we were tasked to invent a poetic form. I did one that I call the Dipper. But I mean, the one that I wrote that exists in the world took me days to figure out, but I don't know, challenge. I could like try to show how I would go about doing it, even if I don't finish. um, and maybe challenge people to create their own dipper. But like, yeah, like a little dipper. Oh, I love that. Thank you, Ginger. I'm gonna write that down. Little Dipper, new invention, question mark. All right. Well, thank you everyone. I'm gonna let you go and I'll throw this up on YouTube and next week we'll do either the golden shovel, duplex, or rib cage. We'll see what happens. All right. Good night.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Bye.
Bye.